What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Salt and Pauper video. My name's Chad. I'm joined by my good friend Josh, otherwise known as Mayo on the internet. We're going to continue our Brothers War Pauper set review with the huge selection of available artifacts coming at us from Brothers War. Man, you ready? You ready to jump right in, man?
I am.
All right, then let's go ahead and kick it off. All right, first off, we have Aeronaut's Wings, 2-mana artifact equipment. It says equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has flying, and it has equip 2. I mean, this seems like a worse version of several cards we already have, right?
Yeah, it really is. The equip 2 is detrimental. I will say it's different from the one that comes in and attaches because this one actually gives a power bump.
True.
But given the choice, I would most likely play. You put a gun up to my head. I had to play one of these effects. It probably would be the one without the power, that just attaches on enter.
Yeah, the free attach is big. Yeah, and if you're gonna pay 2 mana for something like this, why not just run like Cloak of the Bat? You know,
Yeah, haste is so
a
much
big deal.
nicer. Yeah.
All right. Let's see what's up next. We got Blitz Automation. Speaking of haste, we have a 7-mana artifact creature construct that is a 6/4 with haste with prototype. For 2 and a red, you get it as a 3/2 with haste instead. What do you think here?
I'm thinking Blitz Automaton is slightly overpriced in the prototype section. He'd be a really fun card to flicker, or an interesting card to flicker, just because you can still swing with it on that turn, just so long as it's not until end of turn flicker.
Yep.
But if it cost 2 instead of 3 for the prototype, or it had slightly lower stats to make up for that cost, then it would be more playable. Unfortunately, this is the one that's just right on the line for me. The rest I don't think are going to be playable, but we'll be getting into that later.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is like right on the line. It's just one generic mana too much, and even if you need to balance it out, I really like that you could have gone with the option of like a 3/1 haste, Hellspark Elemental, or like Ball Lightning kind of feel where it was just something that got in there for damage really quickly at the 2-mana mark, or even if it was a 6/1 at like the 3 red mana mark, or something like that maybe.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but I think those type of effects lend themselves to also having trample, which this just couldn't have because it'd have too many keywords and need to cost even more mana. And I don't know, for 7 mana on 6/4, I think it could probably have had trample and been fine. And making it a 3/1 for 2 with haste and trample would have been in line with cards we've already seen. Um, Not at common, mind you, at uncommon, but we have seen that design space explored, like I said, Hellspark Elementals and stuff like that. So I think there was definitely room to make this card good, push it just a little bit harder, and they didn't. They erred on safe, because I think they were probably worried about flicker interactions and stuff like that with making these cards a little too good on the prototype side. Um, so
I'm not.
they kind of backed it off, but yeah, I think this is right on the line for me. I think the prototype costs 1 too much, and I think 7 is pretty much unplayable. So I don't see this making any splashes anywhere, but it was really close.
Yeah, I'm convinced they don't actually care about the commons. Because like this, it could be really close to good, but I don't think that it's worth their time to go into. Oh man, but this one card and this one strategy be overpowered for what's
No,
it,
I don't think that
200
they go
main cards
quite
in the set.
that far in depth. I think the Future
Mhm.
Future League is probably as far as they get into R&D, right? They're just looking at what's
Yeah.
good in Standard, which is the only real
Mhm.
format they test for. Although now I'm sure they play test for EDH. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know why they backed this card off, but it definitely feels like this card did not start out where it is. They tuned it back for some reason. I don't know what that reason is, but I'm sad they tuned it back.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to see what the original printing was on
Yeah,
this.
me too. All right. Next up, we have Boulder Branch Golem, which is an artifact creature golem. It costs 7 mana. It's a 6/5. When it enters the battlefield, you gain life equal to its power. And then it has prototype for 3 and a green. You get it as a 3/3. So for 4 mana, you get a 3/3 gain 3 life. For 7 mana, you get a 6/5 gain 6 life. Um, I mean, I know it's a common versus a rare, but like, boy, I'm looking at cards like Obstinate Baloth. I'm looking at cards like Thragtusk, and I'm looking at that 7 very questionably. You know what I mean? Like, this card costs so much for that effect, and we've seen 3 mana 3/3s that gain 3 life when they enter the battlefield. Now, granted, it was green white, but this could have very easily been, Jewel Thief, but gain 3 life. A 3 mana 3/3 for 3. Or, sorry, a 3 mana 3/3 that gains 3 life when it ETBs. I don't know why they had to scale this up to 4. Again, I think this is one of those cases, sort of like the cards in Dominaria United, where it just costs 1 too much. Close but no cigar, you know?
It is real close. I I would felt better if it was a colorless and double green, if they wanted to reduce it like that. But a hill giant that gains 3 is not enough.
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right. Next up, we have Clay Revenant, which is a 1 mana 1/2 artifact creature golem. It enters the battlefield tapped, and you can pay 3 mana, a 2 and a black, to return Clay Revenant from your graveyard to your hand. Man, Persistent Specimen really makes this card look like ass.
It really does.
It really does,
I'm happy that you thought that same thing, because it really is Persistent Specimen, but worse.
Yeah.
Granted, it is an artifact.
That I don't think that matters enough.
Matters. Yeah, right. I mean, you can
In most cases
altar
these days, that's
anyways.
a bad thing, not a good thing. It just opens you up to more heavily sideboarded removal. So I'm real sad this card isn't better than it is. All right. Any closing thoughts here?
I mean, it's nice that it's got 2 toughness.
All right,
That's
moving right along. Coastal Bulwark. Now this is a card I actually kind of like. It's a 2 mana 1/3 wall artifact creature wall with defender, and it says it gets +2/+0 as long as you control an island, and then it has 2 and a tap for surveil 1. So this is a 3/3 on turn 2 in blue. That's really powerful at slowing the game down, especially with something for the late game where if you aren't forced to chump block with it, it starts eking out some value as you get into the mid and late game, because 2 mana tap really isn't that big a cost, and you're going to be leaving some mana open the majority of your turns to represent your counter spells, represent your bounce spells, your interactions, right? So on any turn you're not forced to use those spells or deploy those answers, you just get the surveil for free. Like, I quite like this card. I don't know that it will see play in Pauper Constructed. To me, artifact is a bad keyword to have right now.
Yeah.
And the decks that are running islands are all hyper focused on a very singular goal. Most of it is tempo related, so you really just can't rely on a defender to kind of, it's not going to be worth its card slot. There's not really a hard control deck in blue that's not Tron.
Yeah.
And they don't run any islands, so.
Right. Yeah, the magic word is this is a control card. It's not Wall of Blossoms. It's not Wall of Omens. It's still got some pretty good value on the surveil there. Immediately, though, I think of just as slowing the game down. I think to the Strixhaven 2-drop that was a 3/3. If you cast an instant or sorcery, it could attack.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is better than that one, just barely.
Yeah, it's colorless. That's a big deal.
Well, I mean, the other one was hybrid, so it was still easy enough to cast.
Sure.
But I don't know, Artifact is a really really bad word on some
Yeah, I
cards.
wish this didn't have Defender. Like I want this to be
Hmm.
like if you just keep the artifact creature and you drop the wall text and you make it like a crab. Right? You make it like Coastal Claw Crab or whatever. It's a
Mhm.
1/3 crab and it gets +2/+0 as long as you control a basic island. I think the card all of a sudden opens up a really interesting kind of idea and deck building space where you can, throw that in with some delvers and, really kind of find a place for this like aggressive card in this tempo blue deck.
Mm.
But yeah, as it is, I think Defender is a big problem. I think Artifact is a big problem. I think this could see play in the cube if we have like color designated artifact slots, right? Like if in the artifact space we have like a subcategory of one artifact that cares about each color or cares about each land type. Maybe there's an argument for this there, but yeah, sad to say this card probably didn't make in the cut, but I want it to be good.
Right. It's a cute card, and if a control deck pops up, I will be looking at this one as a curve filler. But outside of that, I don't think it's making it into play in constructed.
Agreed. All right. Let's see. What's up next?
Hey, it's an artifact that cares about color.
Combat Courier. It is a 1/1 artifact creature construct for 1. And for 2 mana, you can sacrifice it to draw a card, and it has Unearth for a blue. So on the front end, this is a completely colorless sacrifice itself, draw a card. Um, kind of a weird chromatic star like parallel almost. If this costed 1 to sacrifice it, it would like it. A lot of people would compare it to chromatic star. um, Costing 2 to sacrifice is definitely harder to do than 1. But I don't hate this card. I think this card has some potential. I like that, early on in the game, it's an artifact for any of your artifact matters cards. You can just sacrifice this to whatever you need to sacrifice it to, and then later you can cash this in for 3 mana to draw a card later in the game. So, like, I look at this card, I completely ignore the 2 mana sacrifice it, draw a card. I look at this as a 1 mana 1/1 construct artifact for 1.
Mm.
And then it reads like blue, colorless, exile this card from your graveyard, draw a card. And I think that card is pretty good. I don't know that it's amazing, but it's definitely playable. And when you add that in, and all of a sudden this is blue, colorless, deal 1 damage, draw a card. Now we start to get into some really interesting places. So I'm a fan of this card. I don't know if it has a home yet, but I'm keeping it in my head for like artifact cares decks. I'm keeping it in my head for like blue mid gamey kind of value decks that need some card draw that isn't like, I don't know, Thoughtcast.
Mhm.
Yeah, I look at this card very positively. I think that 1/1 for 1 is kind of where this falls short. A lot of the format is just too big for that.
Mhm.
But if you look at this as just sacrifice fodder, it's a 1/1 for 1 that doesn't really matter, and then later on you can cash it in for a card. It's not bad.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like if it did cost 1 to sack it, then it would be better. It'd be so much better. I'd play this over probably Star in the decks that can afford it, like in
Mhm.
Boros, or not necessarily Boros, but like one that has blue in it, of course. Um, but in the style that Boros
Mhm.
doesn't need the Star for the mana. Um, this is it's just it's I don't know. I like it, but at the same time, I think there's one part of it in each time that's just not enough.
Sure.
Like the 1 mana 1/1, you know,
Mhm.
it's too small.
Can I
The
throw a
use effect
random
cost. Mhm.
random idea on it at you and see what you think of it?
Um, Blitz.
No.
Oh, okay.
What if this just said instead of the 2 mana sacrifice it, draw a card, what if it just said whenever this card leaves the battlefield, draw a card?
That would be too good, I think.
Really? Because I would look at this like the blue version of Implement of Combustion at that point, and I think the card's playable. I don't think it's busted, but I think it's really good.
No, you say when it leaves the battlefield, yeah.
Mhm.
But if it's like when it dies or when you sacrifice it, draw a card. Those are different wordings to it, and I think that would be more balanced.
Sure. So the reason I said leaves the battlefield is that so you still get the card when you unearth it.
That's fair.
Um,
So what if it, whenever it dies or is put into exile from the battlefield?
sure, I'm okay with that too. It
Dang it,
doesn't.
that
I don't
still
need.
works
I don't.
with the flicker. Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't need it to work with Flicker. That's not what the intention is. I just want it to cost 1 blue to ping for 1 and then draw a card.
hmm
Um, and that,
Um,
yeah, I think the card's good though. I don't know that it's incredible. It's not groundbreaking by any means, but it's definitely exciting.
I could see it as a filler. Like if you need the artifact synergy, if you want a card that replaces itself and you have space in your deck, which is becoming more and more difficult to
Yeah,
come by,
definitely harder.
then it's reasonable. I don't see this being a four of. If you
Definitely
need
not.
something
No.
like this, probably two of.
Yeah.
It's hard for me thinking about this card because you do seem to want it in blue, and there is hard evidence.
Sure.
Um,
Make
so
it
its
grab.
combat career is just an expensive, more flimsy clue, but it
Sure.
does draw you another card, possibly. Um,
Yeah, no, I think the red one is definitely better, but we'll get to that in a second.
I agree.
I do like this card though. I think this is probably the second best of the colored mana unearth cards. Um, with like the Rager being in third, and we'll get to those in a second.
Rager's in fifth. There's not even five of them.
Yikes. All right. Next up, Depth Charge Colossus. This is a 9 mana artifact creature dreadnought. It's a 9/9. It says it does not untap during your untap step. You can pay 3 to untap it, and for 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue, you get a 6/6 version on prototype. There is not a piece of text on this card that I think is worth any of those mana costs. I'm not a fan of this card. I think it is awful.
Yeah. It's
Why in the world does this
Hermit.
not untap during your untap step?
Why doesn't it have any good keywords on it?
I mean, I don't hate the untap for 3 mana, but why in the world does it say doesn't untap during your untap step? This is a 6 mana 6/6 vanilla creature and a 9/9 for 9 vanilla creature. Like, why did it need a detriment? I don't understand why this has a negative piece of text on it. Like it needed a fallback or it would be too good. What?
Well, I mean, you see, it does have a drawback though. All right, here in the prototype cost, that's 2 blue. That's not just 4. Or that's not just 6. That's
Yeah, 4
oh,
and
that's
2
so
blue.
scary.
Yeah, I don't understand why this needed a whole extra drawback. Like the whole card is a drawback.
Yeah, I don't see myself remembering this card.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to forget it actively.
I am not going to try to forget it, but I'm probably going to forget it first.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, let's move right along then. See if we can expedite that forgetfulness. Next up,
what?
we have an equipment for Dredging Claw, which is a 2 mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0, has menace. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield from the graveyard, you may attach Dredging Claw to it. And then it has equipped for a black and a colorless. So this auto equips to any of your unearthed dudes.
And maybe you've recommissioned ones as well.
Yep. And if you recommission or like cast a regular unearth, you don't even need to use unearth the ability to equip it. I think there's a lot of potential for this card. I just don't think there's a deck for it. And I don't know why it costs 2 to cast. This should cost 1 to cast.
I
I'm okay
I'm
with
a
the
little
equip
concerned
being
about the
mana.
equip being color intensive.
Oh, definitely. But that's kind of my reason why this should cost 1 mana to play.
Mhm.
If it's going to be too colorless to equip, it can be 2 to play. But if it's going to have black in its equip cost, like, this should be a free equipment. Like,
Mhm.
color in the equip cost is such a huge ask that I can't see it.
Yeah, right. Most of the time, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
I would expect the equip color, or not equip color, the color from the equip cost here to actually be in the mana cost. This seems to fit the theme of the card.
Yeah, but it doesn't fit the theme of the card design. We have another artifact equipment later on that has white in the equipped cost. Um,
Well,
so they've kind of added a few of those options for us in this, and I'm not a fan of it. But I think that if you're going to use that design space, that the cost to play the equipment should be minimal. If you're gonna put a color restriction on the equip.
or the equip, yeah, the equip cost should be lower than what it's listed as, or say, for instance, the effect that you're getting out of the equipment, if you're making it more difficult to put on a creature, should be stronger.
Yeah, I like that
Uh,
this has a way to auto equip itself or attach itself. That's a good way to dodge the color requirement.
mhm.
But yeah, I just don't think this is worth a card slot. It has promise, but I just think the payoff isn't there. Menace is
Yeah,
a good keyword, but it's not that good.
right. It's not flying.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Energy Refractor. Boy, oh boy, is this a card. 2 mana for a generic artifact. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Has an activated ability for 2 generic mana. Add a mana of any color. Oh boy. Prophetic Prisms. Like, it's hard to say whether or not this is better prophetic or slightly worse prophetic, but it is really close to prophetic, which is banned. And it was banned because Tron was too good, and this card goes right into that slot, right back into Flickertron. Um, a lot of people are running Tron. I'm surprised that Tron hasn't top aided any uh, recent challenges running this card, at least not that I've seen. Um, so a lot of people are saying Tron's back, but the results just don't support that. Maybe they haven't dialed in. I know that deck is very meta intensive. Red deck is big right now, so Tron is already kind of held back by that usually, um, and it's very meta intensive in that you have to run a lot of silver bullets. So if you can't dial in your silver bullets to the meta, you're not going to be successful. So maybe they just haven't had time to dial in those silver bullets yet, but boy, oh boy, is this card good.
Mhm. This reminds me of when they came out with Adventurous Sojourner, and
Yeah,
I'm really I it lets us run the idea of like, what if they banned um, the Mirror Enforcer before Sojourner came out,
yeah,
and so I'm interested to seeing if this does push Tron over the top. But yeah, like you said, red deck's really strong. I think this is just a nice cantrip onto if you need the color, which I think Tron is the only deck that does.
yep.
Then you know, you play it in the spot where the prophetic prisms have been.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Tron decks I've seen are running this in the spot that Prophetic Prism was, and running Network Terminal in the spot that Bonder's Ornament was, because Bonder's Ornament is also banned. And they're really close parallels in terms of each other. Now, obviously, Bonder's Ornament is just better than Network Terminal is slightly better. Um, and I think Energy Refractor might be slightly better than Prophetic Prism for Tron specifically, not other decks that were running Prophetic Prism. So I think overall they made out okay. I just don't
Hmm.
know if the meta is too fast for them right now. Monastery Swiftspear's downshift may have nerfed Tron inadvertently, so we'll see if they're able to find ways to stabilize. But with the red decks being as good as they are with Swiftspear and any deck really pushing clocks very quickly, I just don't know if Tron has the time to set up that it needs these days.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, Swiss Sphere just made hot dogs better, more consistent. So that
Well, the premier
Kalatha Red.
red deck right now isn't even hot
Mhm.
dogs. The best red deck is Kalatha.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like even the non-premier red deck would take a dump on Tron.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it,
definitely.
um, yeah, and those both have a pretty good market share. So I don't. It's a good card. It's a good replacement. Um,
Great card.
maybe a
Probably
slight
the
nerf.
most useful artifact, but yeah,
Oh yeah,
I
but I
don't,
mean, like,
I don't know if it's enough. All right, next up, Goblin Fire Bombs. 1 mana artifact with flash. Interesting. With 7 mana tap sacrifice, destroy target permanent. Uh, this reminds me of Spine of Isha, but like without all the good stuff that Spine of Isha could do.
mhm.
Or like what was it? It was
Hell
like
Vault or Moon Vault was it?
no, Meteor Golem. All of the powerful like ETB destroy target non-blank permanent or destroy target permanent, um, and this just like and all of those worked well because they comboed with flickers of some kind or that you could like cheat the artifact back out. This is bad because of the like because I don't. I'm a little sad this card is unplayable because I think it could have been a really cool like threat of activation artifact, but boy, it needed to be the other way. Like sacrificing for the effect is just such a bad thing here. This needed to just be a really expensive, like clunky artifact that did something on ETB.
Uh, yeah, I guess. I don't see too much of a difference in the mana cost being either way, front loaded or back loaded. Um, because like you still have to pay a lot to do either portion of this.
Oh no, I'm not worried about the mana cost. I only care that it says
Mhm.
sacrifice to do the effect. This needed to be an ETB effect so that it's flickerable, and then it could have been as front loaded as you want. If the effect was good, somebody would have figured out how to play it or cheat it into play.
Hmm.
Um, as it stands, I'm just sad this card is basically unplayable.
Uh, sounds like you mean unbreakable, so therefore
Those are
unplayable.
the same thing in Pauper these days.
Yeah,
Pauper is
it's
not a fair format these
mhm.
days,
Yeah, paying 7 try and kill one thing is not enough. Or
especially when
there's
you
this
can flicker that
mhm,
thing to whiff the effect. Ugh.
right. So I mean, if it didn't say sacrifice it and it said 7 tap destroy target permanent,
I would
but
be
it had a higher
way
mana
more
cost.
on board.
Hmm.
I don't think it would be good, but I would be way more on board.
Well, and like I'm saying though, this does remind me a lot of Hell Vault, except for it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't bring the things back when it dies.
Sure.
It's just one time use Hell Vault, and I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah, I'm just
But
sad that
I
it's
would
not
not
playable.
play either one of them.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Next up is Goring Warplow, which is a 6 mana artifact creature construct. It's a 5/4 with Death Touch, but for prototype and a black and a colorless, you get it at 1/1 with Death Touch. This card actually made an appearance at the winner of the first challenge, I believe, after Brothers War was legal in a black white flicker deck because it is the only Pauper legal prototype card that comes down fast enough to actually matter. Um, and 3 mana over 2 turns, right? 2 mana and then 1 mana to make a 5/4 is like pretty good rate. um, I don't know if it's good enough once people know to expect it. But certainly doesn't seem bad to make 5/4s for 1 mana.
Yeah, I like that idea. I'm more of a fan of this being a 3 drop, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote. You just leave the ephemerate up, so you just
Yep.
never shields down for it. But yeah, this card is big. It, I mean, I don't know why it has Death Touch on here, but it deals with enough things. Um, with just its base power.
Mm-hmm.
So
I will say I like that at very worst, it's a 1/1 death touch that still blocks Angler or Terror profitably, which is
right,
I love that. That's great.
yeah, it's a solid creature that only gets solid or
Yeah, I think this is one of those things where the artifact subtype is or card type is actually like a bad thing on this card. I think it would be better if it was just a black creature that had a colorless casting cost. Like if you keep this card exactly the same but you omit artifact from it, I think the card's better.
well, yeah. But this one is actually one of the cards that I think earns that artifact a drawback.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I like this card. I'm with you. I don't think it needed Death Touch, but I like that it has it.
Mm-hmm. That's just, I guess, for when it's attacking, it needs to be double blocked
Yep.
by the two anglers.
I personally would have rather seen this card, but with Menace, and been happier about it.
Yeah.
But that's
But
just
then
knowing the
the prototype
application
would
that
be
it.
totally stuffed.
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah, because they'd be like, it needs to be a 2/2.
We
We
have
need
a
to make it
1/1
4
for one
cost.
with Menace.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just looking at it for what it's being used for right now. But yeah, I would have liked this to have Menace. All right, next up is one of the assembly workers. We have a Mine Worker, which is a 2-mana 2/1 artifact creature assembly worker. It says tap, gain 1 life. If you control creatures, name Power Plant Worker and Tower Worker. So if you have all 3, it gains 3 life instead. I mean, this is a limited card. These are gag cards. There's no shot these get played in anything. 2 mana would be okay if all 3 of them costed 2 mana. But they don't, and that's a problem.
yeah. I'm looking at the cost on each of them, and while they are all different, they're not staggered, you know?
Mm-hmm.
There's you get to 2, then you get to I think 3 on the other one, and then you jump to 5.
Yep.
Yeah, it's unexciting that mana
I
cost
don't
jump.
know why all 3 of them don't cost 7 mana. It should have added. It should have been 2 for
The 3 put
mine,
together to
2
be
for
7.
power,
Yeah.
3 for tower. They should have costed the mana that their land makes. It would be cleaner. It would fit the design space better. It would make more sense thematically. I cannot fathom why they add up to 10 mana when Tron makes 7.
Uh, you know, I don't think anyone can argue that point.
All right. Well, then let's see what's next. Next up, we have Mishra's Juggernaut, which is a 5 mana artifact creature Juggernaut. It's a 5/3, as Juggernauts tend to be. It has Trample, and it attacks each combat if able, as Juggernauts tend to do. But this one comes with Unearth for 5 and a red. I don't hate this card. I think that this card's biggest downfall is the fact that it has 3 toughness and it costs 5 instead of 4. This needed to cost 4 like most other Juggernauts, and I think it would have been pretty good, but 5 mana hurts this card a lot.
You hit on the problems I have with this card too, because it's not a Juggernaut. It untaps each turn as well. So, yeah, not a fan of that part. I think Unearth cost should be maybe 1 lower, and the mana cost be reduced by 1. 4 mana for a 5/4 trample, attacks each combat, and then the 5 mana for the Unearth for a Lob Axe. Completely reasonable.
Yep.
I don't know why they decided to make this cost more and also be weaker.
Yeah, I mean, it falls into the same problem we've had with a lot of these artifacts, where they just picked numbers that were 1 too high in like a lot of the wrong places.
Yeah. And unfortunately, most of the time it's mana cost.
Yep. All right. Next up is the second of the gag cards. We have Power Plant Worker, which is a 5 mana. Artifact creature assembly worker. It's a 4/4 and it says 3 generic mana, gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If you control all three, it gets 2/1/1 counters instead. And then for some reason it says activate only once each turn, which just flabbergasts me. I Why does this cost 5? Um, why is the why is the activated ability limited to once a turn? I just I don't understand. And what does this have to do with the power plant? Like, they're not even very thematic. It just
Yeah, I mean, there's a 3 on it somewhere. That's very power planty.
it's
Or
not. The
that's
tower
power.
makes the 3.
Look, man, it's got +2/+2, I guess. It's got 2/1/1 counters if you control
Yeah.
all 3 workers.
I
I don't know what to say. It's
yeah.
not great. It's
I
a
it's bad. It's
yeah.
it's real bad. But it peeves me that they did not line these up with their associated lands. The only one that does is the mine worker. It costs what its land makes. I don't know why the rest of them don't. It's very dumb.
It's goes back to Grizzlebrand, 7/7/7 cost 8. Just a flavor miss.
All right. Next up, what do we got? Oh, we have the artifact Nessie and Asp. Rust Goliath says 10 mana. God, that's a lot of mana. For an artifact creature construct, it's a 10/10 with reach and trample. Boy, oh boy, will that end games quick. And then for prototype, you pay 3 green, green, you get a 3/5 with reach and trample. I have seen people comparing this, like I said earlier, to Nessie and Asp, which is a 4/5 reach for 5. Um, and then you can monstrous it to make it an 8/9. Um, I'll be honest, I think Nessie and Asp is significantly better than this card, even without trample. I think that 4 power is a really big deal right now, and I think that 1 green is always better than 2 green. Um, and I think it's 7 mana to monstrous Nessie and Asp, right? So 7 is a lot easier to get to than 10.
Hmm.
Um, I just I don't see myself even in cube. I don't see this card ever getting casted for 10 mana. That's just so much mana. And why would you ever play this as a 5 drop like on purpose? You know what I mean? Like there's so many better
Yeah.
green 5 drops.
There's um there's a 3/5 reach creature that gains you life that I would play over this guy. Although it is something to note, this is, I think, the new largest creature in Pauper. I think the largest previously was what, 8/9?
Yeah, yep. I believe this is the biggest creature that is legal in Pauper.
So there is an award that this card gets. But that's it. There's nothing else. I mean, if you could find a way to cheat this in play somehow and like fling it or Teamer Battle Rage it for the lulls, you're gonna win that game. But every other game you have it in your deck, it's not gonna do anything for you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What's up next? Scrap Work Cohort is a 4 mana 3/1 artifact creature soldier. When it enters the battlefield, it makes a 1/1 colorless soldier. And then it unearths for 2 and a white. Why is this a 3/1? It's a soldier. It should, like, why is it a 3/1? You could have just made it a goddamn knight as a 2/2 for 4 that comes with a 1/1, and it would still be worse than a tended knight because it doesn't have first strike and it costs 4. And if you made it a 2/2 that made a 2/2 like Gallant Cavalry for 4, it would be pretty good, especially with Unearth, but I think that's like the only iteration of the card that's playable.
Um, yeah, I think they were designing around the Unearth side of it. I would be happy with this at 3 mana and 3 Unearth.
I wish this said whenever it attacks, make a 1/1 soldier artifact creature token tapped and attacking. It would be better than the ETB trigger, and it would still work with the Unearth.
Mm. Yeah, cause I'm trying to
And
think.
at 3/1, there's like no reason for it to be as weak as it is. Like, give it a reason to attack. Give it a payoff for surviving one attack, because that's a fucking accomplishment. Like, yeah, I don't know. Not I played this card in my limited pool and it was okay at best. Like, the Unearth did matter one time, but boy did it just not feel good very often. It's just that the format is so slow that you can afford to play it, but nothing else is slow enough to make this playable.
That's fair. I don't see this card being better than Mercire.
Oh, me either.
Because like that's on the edge of playability just for artifact count.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you have some sort of a silly synergy with for the Unearth, or some way to abuse this card, maybe. But you'd have to focus on breaking this card, and that alone would make your deck so much worse.
Yep.
Because like this is not a card to want to try to break.
I agree.
This is a card to put in a closet and never speak of again.
Fair enough. Let's do that. Next up is Scrapwork Mutt, which is a card I actually do like. One, it's a dog. We know dogs are always going to be playable. Looking at you, Hound of Isamaru. Or Hound of Coda. 2 mana for Scrapwork Mutt gets you an artifact creature dog that is a 2/1, so it's got Piker up front. And it enters the battlefield. You may discard a card if you do draw a card, so it has Fisher Wizard on ETB. And then it unearths for a red and a colorless, so you get the Fisher Wizard again if you want it, plus a 2/1 attacker for 2. This card is probably the only iteration of the colored unearth cycle, I guess you could call it, that both halves, I think, are playable. I think this card is quite good. I don't think this card exists in the red deck that we have right now. I think this card has to exist in like a completely separate area from that deck. But I think both halves of the card are good. I think the card is a strong contender for cube slot, but only as a red card. And I think in constructed, it has promise. Like I said, I don't think there's a deck for it yet. But I'll keep it in my thought process when I'm looking at cards to fill decks that I've read in them for sure. And it's a dog. Yeah. Like you gotta give the dogs a shot.
Gotta do it for the lulz. I like this card as well. Scrapwork Mutt. It's rummaging is a fine ability, and it's. I don't want to say it's got a relevant typing, but it's got a lovely typing, and that is just the goodest boy.
Right, I know. Especially after we got, what's the one out of Neo? The enchantment dog that draws a card when it ETBs? Faithful something?
Oh, yeah. That's the goodest boy, too.
Yeah, but I just, like, we've gotten a couple of good dogs now, and I'm into it. Mm-hmm. All right. What's up next? I mean, that was quick. Do you have any ideas for how to really set this card off, or are we just excited about a 2-mana colorless Piker that has Fisher Wizard stapled on it twice? Because that seems good enough to me. Like, and I like that it's a May effect.
Yeah. So that's what I enjoy too. Is that it's colorless and it's just a good enough card on its own. It's good in cards or in decks that want to fill the graveyard, good with cards, or decks that have a bad hand that one game, good with it's just good. And it's really difficult to want to elaborate on cards that are just good.
Yep. Fair enough. Awesome art too. Love how good that card looks. All right. Next up we have Scrapwork Rager. Your pick for the worst of these this cycle, by the way. We just saw the best, so here's the worst. Scrapwork Rager is a 4-mana artifact creature, Phyrexian Horror. It is a 2/2. God, that's so bad. Enters the battlefield, you draw a card, you lose 1 life, and then it has Unearth for 3 and a black. So unlike Scrapwork Rager, not Rager, the mutt that we just looked at, the dog that we just looked at, where both halves were perfectly playable and they had the right mana cost, this card is perfectly unplayable because both halves cost 1 too much mana. Like, we've seen this effect on every 3-drop printed, and then we've seen better 3-drops printed in white. So how in the world should this cost 4 mana on both ends, man? I can't understand the idea here to make this a 4-drop.
Exactly. I don't enjoy this card at all, just because it is 1 too much on both sides. Rager's just fine. The Unearth being an actual Rager cost would make the most sense. I, if I'm paying 4 for an effect like this, not only am I not loving it, and not only am I probably losing at that point, I think there's no way that um, I would be able to do anything with that card effectively that I would enjoy.
Yep.
My disdain for this card is, I want to say it's beyond measure.
I think
I'm
it's
certain I
exactly
can find
measurable. It's, 4 mana.
my disdain is
measurable in mana
exactly
cost.
4 mana for this card.
All right. Let's see. Next up is a card that I didn't even know existed, and I read through the spoiler. It's called Stone Retrieval Unit. It's a 4 mana 2/3 artifact creature construct, and when it enters the battlefield, you create a tapped Power Stone. For those of you who do not remember, an artifact or a Power Stone is an artifact token that says tap, add a colorless mana. This mana cannot be spent to cast non-artifact spells. And for the people who don't know what that means, it means that you can cast artifact spells, but you can also spend it for costs of anything that is not casting a spell. You can cast. You can use it to activate ETB abilities. You can use it to activate Unearth. Whatever activated abilities you've got, you can use these on. So, take that with what you will. That being said, this has the same problem. It costs too much. It's a 4 mana spell that should cost probably 2, realistically 3. And I don't think anything except maybe the 2 mana version is getting played.
Yeah, the one that dies and then you take the Power Stone away.
No, I meant literally if you just make this a 2-drop, it would see play, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's fair. Because
If
it's
you
not
leave
exactly
everything else alone, you make this just a 2-drop, it would be played. That's the only iteration that sees play. We have Supply Drop, which is 3 mana artifact with flash. It says when it enters the battlefield, target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. You can pay 4 mana, tap, sacrifice it, draw a card. I get what they were going for with this, but this is just like significantly worse than Spare Supplies, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Although this doesn't enter tap, so if you have 7 mana, you can
You get a card.
give a creature +2/+2 and draw a card.
But
Tell me that's not the artifact cantrip you were
with
looking for.
Spare Supplies for 2 mana, you could get a card.
Yeah, but that's
Just
a
can't do it
sorcery
at instant
speed to
speed.
play it. And see right there. I'm already against what your decision is here.
Yeah, but you're doing your thing 5 turns after I'm doing my turn.
Whoa. I'm doing it 4 turns after because I'm drawing land every turn. You've played against me before.
Yeah, that's fair. Technically, if you do the end of turn 3-drop and then 4 mana, spend your turn drawing a card, you can do it 2 turns after I do my thing.
Oh, don't tempt me.
Now we're getting somewhere. All right, no, we're not. This card's bad.
We're getting to the end of the list.
I understand what they were going for, but man, did they just miss the mark on this one for Pauper. Next up, Swiftgear Drake. It's a 5 mana artifact creature Drake. It's a 2/4 with flying and haste. And when it enters the battlefield, you put one target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. Go ahead, you take this. I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about. It's got a lot of text, but none of it matters because it says 5 mana in the top right corner.
Yeah, don't we have this? But it costs 1 mana. It's not a creature, and it draws a card.
No idea.
Get the name of it. It's you're playing it in the Tron combo. You know, the one that's puts a card on the bottom of your library, then you draw a card.
Puts a card on the bottom of your library, draw a card. It's a creature?
No, it's not. It's just a straight artifact, no creature.
Oh, Bauble?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Bobble's just better.
Yeah, I mean, Bauble's not a creature, but I get what you're going for here. Yeah, this has
Yeah, no,
5
that's
mana,
a
dude.
good
It's
thing,
just
though.
it's so bad.
That's it costs 1. It's not a creature. It does the thing that you're trying to do, and it also draws you a card.
That's true. But it doesn't have flying and haste, and for that it costs 4 less.
Oh man. And you know, something tells me that those two keywords together do not equal 4 mana.
Definitely not. Especially not on a 2/4. Like, I don't understand why this card's a 2/4. This could have been a 3 mana flying haste 2/2 with the same effect, and it would have been balanced according to mana cost. How did this get 2 toughness and become a 5-drop? I just don't understand. Alright, let's see. Next up is Takasia's Onulet, which is a 5 mana artifact creature construct. It's a 4/4. When it leaves the battlefield, gain 2 life. It has Unearth for 3 and a white. Man, Obstinate Baloth is just looking better and better these days.
Right?
I mean, I understand that this is a colorless card, so you're paying a tax to have it in any deck, but boy, like, it's not good.
A lot of tax.
And it's like really not good, which is the funny part. Like, it's like actively bad. If this is the best option for what you're trying to do, you should try to do something else. I don't know how else to put it.
You're not wrong. You're just blunt. Yeah,
This is the best way I can put it.
I mean, there's just I want the cards that they're introducing to be better than they are. You know? And it's just
But, I mean, the cool thing about this eternal spoiler season and the never-ending, feed tube of product being released by Wizards these days is that we've got a new set to review literally tonight. So we really don't have to we don't have to be sad about the poor card quality of artifacts in Brothers War for very long.
That's fair. Like those 2 that we forgot earlier.
2 that we forgot earlier?
Exactly.
What did we forget earlier? Oh, okay.
I have a number 2 written down here.
Oh, fair enough. Why do I have tally marks on my arm? All right. The last one of the gag set, Tower Worker. 3 mana. See, this one has the right mana cost. It's a 1/3 artifact creature assembly worker for 3 mana. It has reach, and it says tap, add a mana, control all 3, add 3 mana instead. This is the type of card we should have had. I don't know what was up with Power Plant Worker, but that ruined the set. It really did. Because Mine Worker is a 2 cost, which is what it should be. It taps to do something small but relevant, and it's a 2/1. This is cost 3, which is what it should be. It's fairly small and mostly irrelevant, but it's tap activated ability. It does something, but it does more if you have all 3. Why is the Power Plant Worker just significantly overcosted and scaled way up to be a 5-drop? It should be a 2-drop, and this set would be marginally playable. It's so annoying. All right. As it stands, I mean, this is as unplayable as the rest of them, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Last but not least, we have Veteran's Power Blade, which is a 3-mana artifact equipment. It says equipped creature gets +2/+0. It has equipped soldier for 1 white or regular equipped for 2 colorless. I mean, this is so far from Bone Splitter, right? Like,
Yeah.
so far from Bone Splitter.
I mean, soldier was a relevant typing in this set. I don't know how far that pushes soldiers to be in a constructed deck.
Well, if it was gonna be a soldier thing, it should have been colorless to equip a soldier. Or have a similar kind of parallel effect to the black one, whereas whenever a soldier enters the battlefield, you can attach it. But this whole
yes.
This whole 1 mana to equip a soldier, 2 mana to equip something else is just bad.
Mm-hmm. Leaves a taste, doesn't it?
Yeah, not a fan. Not a fan. Overall, pretty meh from the artifact section of Brothers War, which in my opinion was fairly disappointing. I mean, it's an artifact themed set. I felt like we should have some big, some heavy hitting artifacts, and we really just didn't. I think for me at least, the best card out of the artifact package is Energy Refractor, and that's like just because it's the only card here.
Yeah, there's like 2 other cards to talk about. Like Scrapwork Mutt is
That's a red card.
It's just a good card. I mean, not necessarily.
It's a red card.
You play in a red deck, yeah, but it is technically colorless.
It's a red card. If it goes in the cube, it's in a red slot, and you know it.
Well, I mean, that's because it's your cube.
Alright guys, that wraps up the artifact section of the Pauper set review for the Brothers War artifacts. Let us know if you think we got anything wrong down below in the comments, and if you've made it this far in the video, please consider subscribing. It really does help the channel grow. Make sure you like the video, drop something down below for the algorithm, and keep an eye on the next video release, the top 5 video. We're going to announce the giveaway for the 200 sub giveaway for our set of awesome tokens. So stay tuned for that. And as usual, guys, goodbye forever unless I see you next time. Peace out.